Hi, this is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator of PowerfulInterviews.com. I am the creator of AudioSecretsTrainingEvent.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, international speaker, the Hecto Millionaire, the phenomenal Jay Samit. Jay Samit wrote his best-selling book, which is called Disrupt You. So in this interview, you're going to hear exclusively how Jay Samit has raised millions and millions of dollars for startup companies. Also in this interview, Jay Samit talks about you have to have general, phenomenal insight and perseverance if you want to be a successful entrepreneur or business professional, and much, much more. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes. In this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, international speaker, successful businessman, the Hecto Millionaire, Jay Samit. This interview, it will change your life. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you will be well informed when I release other phenomenal videos. So, check it out. I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Jay Samit to the show.
Hey, a pleasure to be here.
I'd like to thank you, Jay, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about creating wealth and about your phenomenal book, Disrupt You. I gladly appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
To everyone that's listening on the show, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Jay is going to break down layman's terms on how you can create massive wealth, and he's definitely going to talk about his phenomenal best-selling book, Disrupt You. Is that correct, Jay?
Yeah, so it's real simple. Everybody thinks being in business is about selling somebody something. That's not what it is. All that an entrepreneur does is solve problems. Solve problems for 10 people, you make $10. Solve for $1 million, become a millionaire. Solve for billions, become a billionaire. It's really that simple.
Now, what I'd like to know, Jay, and can you explain to the listeners in layman's terms, who is the powerful Jay Samit? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Well, I don't know if I'd say powerful is the right word, but I'm no different than you, Arthur. Grew up in Philadelphia. When I got out of college, nobody was hiring. So I realized that you have to come up with a different way to be successful. And I wanted at that time to make special effects in Hollywood movies like Star Wars. Couple problems. I didn't know anything about special effects. I didn't know anybody in Hollywood, and I didn't have any money. But for $1, I printed business cards, made up a fake company, didn't make myself the head of it, and went out and hustled for some special effects work. Next thing you know, you're sitting there with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work. Then you can hire people that actually know how to do it. And what you find out in life is most people would rather be employees. And you have a choice in life. You can either work for somebody else and make their dreams come true, or you can follow your own. And really, the difference between a dream and getting something done is assigning a date to it. So a dream with a deadline is suddenly a goal. And so many people don't have goals. I mean, it is so easy. Raising capital today, there is endless amounts of money available. Crowdfunding, private equity, venture capital has put out $40 billion last year just to people that have never started a business or done anything.
Wow.
And you don't have to do it in technology, but we're all in technology. What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? You look at that phone. What's the last thing you do at night? You're holding in your hand a device that connects you to 6 billion consumers. You're only one click away from changing the world. You only have to be right for a nanosecond to become a billionaire. I mean, today, billions of people use technology that I had the privilege to work on. And you suddenly realize that it is easy to tap into that. The infrastructure's there. And whether you're opening a local restaurant or you're creating the next self-driving car, it all follows the same path. Social media is a much cheaper way to reach people than having to have large advertising dollars. There are companies that are willing to give you millions of dollars that don't want a piece of your company, don't want you to pay it back, don't want interest. What they want is to be able to take and work with you on your ideas to satisfy their customer base. Make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, Steve Jobs, when he got into the business of printing phones before he passed away, he had $117 billion cash in the bank because he basically solved the problem in the
I'll take it one step further. You and Steve Jobs both wrote the same amount of code in your lifetime. So he built the largest tech company in the world. He wasn't an engineer. Woz will tell you that, there wouldn't have been an Apple success without Steve. You only need two things to be successful in life: insight and perseverance. And insight's fairly easy. And for anybody listening, I'll walk you through how you can have $1 billion idea within the month, guaranteed. Write down 3 problems in your life today. Do that every day for a month. The first day, it's easy. Oh, there was traffic this morning, whatever the problem might be. But as you get through your month, you're going to start having to look at things in your daily life that you said that's the way it always was, and suddenly realize it doesn't have to be. So let's take traffic. 2 kids were sitting in traffic in Tel Aviv, and they realized the phone company knows I'm here in my car and that other guy's in his car. If my phone told me to go left and the other guy to go right, there'd be no traffic. That was the basis for Waze. They sold it for $1 billion their first year in business without having 1 penny in revenue.
Wow.
And you can do that again and again. So the example is really, first off, wake up and say, do you have problems in your life? If you do, hallelujah, because now you have something to work on to solve. It may turn out that other people have the same problems, and now that we have new ways of solving things, you might have a solution that nobody else has bothered to focus on. That's where innovation happens.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that powerful word, innovation, and I've seen that you actually shared the stage with Bill Gates, Steven Spielberg, Richard Branson. You shared the stage with also Mr. Paul Allen. You shared the stage with a lot of powerful business leaders. How did that all come about, and did you know when you was getting to the entrepreneurial space that you would be rubbing shoulders with top centers of influencers?
Of course not, but many of those people weren't famous when we started. What you do is you start with an idea, and a great idea is like a flame to moths. It attracts other great minds. When I sold my first tech company in the 90s, I had this idea that this was before the internet was widely used, that if we could get the internet into every classroom, we could have equal access to knowledge. It would solve Brown versus the School Board of Education, if you remember that court decision of separate but equal. And so we went out there, and I started writing about this. And one day I'm sitting in my office. Again, I only had a company of 20 people. Nobody ever heard of me. And I get a phone call from somebody with a really bad impersonation of an Arkansas accent claiming to be the President of the United States. I then embarrassed myself making President Bill Clinton prove to me he was Bill Clinton. But he invited me to the White House. To make a long story short, he liked the idea. He embraced the idea. And 18 months later, we had wired every classroom in the United States with a connection to the internet without spending $1 of taxpayer money.
Wow.
All because you start with a big idea. And when you realize you have no limits, what you have to do is start realizing that your potential is limitless. You put the limits on you. No one is stopping you. There's no gatekeepers blocking your success. But when you were raised, your teachers told you what you could and couldn't do. Your parents told you you can't be this, you can't be that. Stop giving up on your dreams, listening up to people that gave up on theirs. The only people that ever changed the world were those that were stubborn enough to believe they could.
Wow.
So you and I both grew up in Philadelphia. I will never forget being a kid in public school when they divided up the reading groups. When you're a little kid, they had the Eagles because it was Philadelphia, the Hawks, and the Mud Hens. And when they tell you you're a mud hen at 4 years old, your future isn't too promising. I grew up dyslexic. People said I was dumb. That was a fancy word for it in the 1960s. Turns out the people you mentioned, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, all dyslexic. Our brains were wired different, which actually made it easier to solve problems and made us successful in business. So the point is, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a genius. 70% of the world's billionaires are self-made. They didn't come from money. They didn't go to fancy schools. But they have the same 24 hours in a day that you and I do. What are they doing differently? And that's why I wrote Disrupt You, to teach people to think differently. I started with teaching a university course on how to start businesses, and 2 of my students did $100 million their first year.
Wow.
Right out of school. So once you prove that this can be systematized and learned, I've been fortunate to do this again and again, and create technologies and work on things that everybody uses every day, LinkedIn, eBay, Facebook. We now take these things for granted, but they all started with a simple idea and then a lot of hard work behind it.
Wow. You mentioned Billionaires. Jay, from your own experience, can you explain to the listeners, what do Billionaires and Millionaires do on a consistent, regular basis that unfortunately broke entrepreneurs just don't do?
Well, for starters, they commit to lifelong learning. Here's a simple way to look at it. I'm 55. If I was your doctor and I told you I hadn't learned anything since I left med school 30 years ago, would you go to me?
No, I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't know all the latest procedures, drugs, anything. I'd be worthless. When was the last time you read a book? When was the last time you boned up on a new subject? That's what it's really about. The world is changing at faster than Darwinian rates. Businesses can't adapt. 100-year-old companies disappear. I was president of EMI, 100-year-old music company. One day, Napster comes along. A couple years later, boom, EMI's over. But you can look at that same obstacle as an opportunity in disguise. That also means that there are new opportunities every day. We hear all these people today that are social media experts, people that are Internet of Things experts, people that are podcasting experts. Where do all these experts come from? They just woke up one day and said, I'm going to be an expert in this, read up and studied, and then promoted themselves. And you can now reach millions of people with your ideas, and it's fairly easy to do. So there's no limit to reinventing yourself. There's no limit to being that successful entrepreneur. Crowdfunding didn't exist when I got started. What a great idea. You can put up what your product is and get it funded. I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars for startups with people that have little more than an idea. But you then take that idea and you have to learn how to frame and communicate it. And so Disrupt You teaches people the step-by-steps of how to do it. I'm not doing this to make any money. You don't make any money from writing a book. I'm doing it because we're losing our middle class. We're losing our society as we know it globally. And we have 2.3 billion millennials. That's more people in one generation than were on the planet when my parents were born. There will not be jobs for those people. Fortune 500 companies have rebounded from the recession and now employ 1 million people less. White-collar jobs, half of them will disappear in the U.S. over the next 5 years due to automation. 3D printing will wipe out 300 million manufacturing jobs. These jobs aren't coming back. It's up to the entrepreneurs to create new industries and new ideas. And if you don't, here's what happens. Massive unemployment. When you look at what happened in our inner cities, what's happening in the Spain and Greek economy, when you look at ISIS, this isn't race, this isn't religion or culture. This is massive unemployment for those in their 20s. So unless we solve this, stability as a world goes away. And it's so easy to do. I've been all across the world. I was working with the Mexican government down in Mexico. They turned entrepreneurship into a national event. They have National Entrepreneur Week. The president was there. We streamed it on the internet. 155,000 entrepreneurs tuned in, and they make this an annual event on television every night for a week to celebrate those that create opportunity. What do? We watch a Kardashian and cats that play on the piano. So what do entrepreneurs do different? What do successful people do different? They're not sitting there watching television. They're solving problems. And unless you live in a world that has no problems, you live in a world filled with opportunity.
So ideas is the real capital of real wealth?
Absolutely. That's where it all starts. Insight. And you don't have to get it right. Here's part of what people don't understand. People think that their startup idea should be nurtured like a small flower waiting to bloom. No. Your idea is stupid. Everybody listening, you have an idea, and I can guarantee you I haven't even met you, it's stupid, okay? The idea is to kill that idea, to find everything wrong with the idea, to iterate in your mind before you start spending money. Talk to 10 prospective customers, find out why they think it sucks, and keep on working on it until you get the zombie idea that can't get killed. Then it's very easy to go out and get it funded. I had a reader that reached out to me, probably one of the best pitches I've heard in 10 years, and now they're on their way to having a $1 billion company. That excites me. There are always new challenges that we haven't figured out how to solve. And it all starts with just looking at your immediate environment. You know, there were 2 kids that couldn't pay their rent in San Francisco, very expensive city. And I said, wait a second. Macworld's coming to town. All these people, all the hotels are sold out. Let's buy some air mattresses and charge people and let them just sleep on the floor of our apartment, and we'll be able to pay our rent. They named their company Airbnb. Today they're billionaires. It's that easy. Every month there's a new self-made billionaire in their 20s. Think about it. What did they do that you didn't? It's not that they had the door opened or an opportunity. They weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They went after it. And now, you know, that's why I wrote Disrupt You, to walk people through the very simple steps. And if you want to get started today, go to jsamit.com, JAYSAMIT.com, and I'll give you for free the 40-page companion workbook so you can start the exercises to start thinking like a successful entrepreneur.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Now, Jay, you disrupt a lot of industries, and you speak all over the world, and when you speak, people listen. Now, can you reveal a formula for the entrepreneurs and business owners that are listening right now? What is one business tip that they can actually implement to raise capital to the $5 million or to the $20 million level or higher?
Very well. Those dollar amounts are easy. The hardest is to get the first few $1,000s. The simplest thing is, what you want to do is have data. And data is just basically saying you figured out some very basic things, okay? So, for example, if you walked into a pizza parlor in your local town and said, Mr. Pizza owner, if I get 10 people to buy a large pizza tonight, will you give us each a third off or a half off on the pizza? And the guy says, sure, that would be great. That's like a group rate. And you do that with 5 different restaurants in town. Then you go to a VC firm and say, look, I have this idea called Groupon. We're going to write software that'll aggregate opportunities with small business. Now, the idea at the end of the day, Groupon was pretty stupid and didn't work. But before it became a public company, the founder was able to put $850 million in his pocket by selling a piece of it to private equity.
Wow.
So when it went public, do you really think it bothered him that the company didn't succeed?
No, it didn't.
I don't think so. I don't think he shed a tear. So data is simple to get. I'll give you another example. Let's go back 10 years ago when broadband first came out, okay? Mm-hmm. Online dating was already big, lots of websites with pictures of people you could date, but video didn't exist because it was too big to get through. So now with broadband, 3 guys sat down and said, wait a second. If we put videos on the dating site, we'll have the best dating site in the world. We're going to make a fortune. So they started a company called Tune In Hookup. People signed up, and then there was one major problem. Nobody wanted to date these losers. Their whole business plan went out the window. But they looked at the data, and that's the key thing in business. That's where the insights come from. And they saw, though nobody was dating them, everybody was sharing the videos with their friends to show how horrible the dating pool was. People liked looking at these videos, so they changed the name of Tune In Hookup to YouTube and became billionaires their first year in business without selling one single ad or $1 of revenue.
Wow. So basically, men and women that immerse themselves in their work as entrepreneurs, they can basically own systems and data that can make them rich. For example, Uber is valued at $52 billion, but yet they don't own no cabs.
They don't own a single car. Airbnb doesn't own a single hotel. Facebook's the largest media company, creates no content. Alibaba's the largest retailer in the world, has no inventory. But let me take it down a step. Let's say you want to open a restaurant. That's the number one most common business started by small business owners and the number one business to fail in the U.S. And want to know why? Because everybody goes, ooh, I've got a great chicken recipe, or I've got a great pasta recipe, or I make great muffins. That has nothing to do with being successful. In Disrupt You, we talk about how you break down the steps of success in a business, and let's look at a restaurant for a second. Number one, you only have so many seats in the restaurant, so if at your busiest times, if two people come in and sit down at a table for four, you can't monetize the other two chairs. So a guy that I wrote about in the book said, wait a second, I'm only going to seat full tables, and I'm going to make people sit with strangers. Number two, you have too many things on your menu. If nobody orders the fish this week, that's your profits that go away, okay? So he said, number two, I'm only going to have 3 things on my menu. Then he realized if he's only going to sit full tables, the people are going to have to wait at the bar until there's a full table, so his bar revenue will go up. So now he's got, I'm going to make you sit with strangers, and you only have 3 choices of food. Now comes the decision of what type of restaurant can I come up with that people will put up with those crazy restrictions. And he named his restaurant Benihana.
Wow.
And for 40 years, people have sat with strangers at full tables, and he maximizes his revenue. That's a disruptor way of looking at a business. I worked with the genius friend who's built 8 companies in 8 different industries that have all become multi-billion-dollar companies, completely unrelated industries. High school dropout, and he's sitting there one day at an airport, and when this happened to all of us, and his flight got canceled. And most of us just sit there and take it. But he was sitting there with his girlfriend at the time. He was young, and he's looking around and sees all these other people. So he goes over and finds out what it costs to just charter a plane, takes a piece of cardboard off the wall, writes on it, $37, holds up a sign, Virgin Airways, and that's how Richard Branson, a music guy, starts an airline. It's that easy. His sole investment to start was a magic marker that he borrowed.
Wow.
You look at a problem, you solve it. Focus on big problems, and you'll get big money. I mean, when Reid Hoffman came to me with the idea of people putting their resumes online and connecting and taking the pain out of finding employees or the pain out of finding a job and created LinkedIn, it fundamentally changed the way, 500, 600, 800 million people now do business. When we created the first auction online that eventually grew into eBay, that changed how people bought and sold things globally. So you start locally. I have a word in my speech that's called SOLO-MO. It's got to be social. It's got to be mobile, because that's how we all communicate today.
Now, eBay owns PayPal, correct?
Correct.
Now, Jay, I know you have sold companies and you bought companies. Can you explain to the listeners, when you are in the process of buying a company, do you look to buy the company on the EBITDA system when you focus on cash flow, or do you look to buy a company when you're looking to buy their book of business?
So it really depends why you're buying a company, okay? So we got to take a step back on the buying of a company. I've been a public CEO of a NASDAQ company. When you are running a public company, you are basically a hamster on a 90-day hamster wheel. Every 90 days, you have your quarterly earnings, and you got to make it by a penny or beat the number by 2 cents. So every CEO is completely focused on the shortest period of time, which means they're not planning and investing in next year or 2 years out or building something from scratch, which means the only way big companies really innovate is by buying some other company that already innovated. So when Google realized, whoa, the whole world went mobile, this iPhone thing's taken over, they bought the Android system, okay? Now, if you then are trying to buy something that is your future, you don't care if it makes a penny. You have the ability to monetize that on your time. So that's why Zuckerberg would buy Instagram or would buy WhatsApp for billions of dollars even though it didn't make revenue, because he knew he could monetize it. So you're buying it for market share, for positioning, for things that can grow your business, that you can scale it. It's the only people that buy a business for EBITDA is an investor, somebody that doesn't want to work anything, that says, I'll own this thing and it'll throw off cash. And those are pretty rare and pretty small. On the other hand, that's why you want to start businesses, because there's somebody that's willing to pay a ridiculous amount for it because they're not buying it for the profit. They'll buy a non-money-making thing. And many times in California especially, you have what are called acqui-hires, where say, here's a company that put together a team, and they decided they were going to make left-handed trash cans, okay? There's no market for left-handed trash cans. Nobody knows what one is, okay? But they put together all the pieces of the business that you need, and you're expanding, and you need 20 employees that work together. You do an acqui-hire. You acquire them just to get the team and put them in something else. I had a young engineer who worked for me who literally left and said he wanted to start his own company, hired a bunch of people, had about 8 people together, didn't know what he was going to do yet, and got bought for $1 million because they just needed a bunch of people. It was a quicker way to hire a team.
Wow.
So there's many ways to look at it. Now, if you're investing in a company, then you're going to focus on things like EBITDA.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Now, Warren Buffett and his business partner, Charlie Munger, they basically are value investors.
Yep. Let's put it this way. Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world, right? Mm-hmm. He made 98% of his wealth after he was 50.
Wow.
And where did he spend those first 50 years? And now, still, he's in the same house that he bought for $30-some thousand. He doesn't own yachts. He doesn't waste his money. He focuses on looking at the trends. Again, getting knowledge and insight. If you don't read, there's no difference between being literate and illiterate if you don't read. A third of our college graduates didn't read a book last year, not one single book. And then people wonder why our economy is in the shape it's in. The knowledge is out there.
Now, I love reading, and unfortunately, reading is a lost art today. Can you explain to the listeners, what books does Jay like to read, and what books do you recommend for the listeners to read?
And again, a lot of people have downtime and say, I don't have the time to read. Well, do you commute? There's audiobooks now. By the way, if you've never gotten a book from audible.com, you can get Disrupt You for free today and hear me narrate it for you for 9 hours. So books that I really liked in the past year, a friend of mine, Rob Tersick, wrote a great book called Vaporized that really explains the dematerialization of our economy. most of the things that we spend our money on are no longer physical things. You, Arthur, I'm willing to bet, spend most of your income on digital things and not physical things. And you're going to go, no, I disagree. You want to make that bet?
Let's do it.
Okay. Again, in percentage of income, I don't care what you make, okay? And things that are not physical. Rent is not physical. Mortgage isn't physical. Credit card bills aren't physical. Health care isn't physical. Phone service, internet service, music, movies, cable, not physical. So, majority of your money going to non-physical things?
So that's data.
That's all data. 40% of your tax dollar goes to IT. And people go, wait a second, it goes to the military, it goes to Social Security, it goes to... No, it goes to huge electronic systems of just moving stuff around. So unless you start realizing and looking at the world from that viewpoint, I consult with one of the largest automakers in the world, and their big problem today isn't, how do I get a kid to buy a Toyota versus a Honda versus a Ford? It's no one wants to own a car. 25% of all miles driven in the year 2020 will be by Uber-like services. So if you're a car maker, GM said, we're late to the game, let's partner with Lyft, and let's have parking lots where anybody can go in and check out a car that already has insurance and everything and be a part-time driver. That's nice in the short term, but we all know that we're less than a decade away from self-driving cars. Toyota went the next step and said, wait a second, instead of paying cash for a car or taking out a car loan, we'll give you a car for free. The car goes into a rental pool because most of the time when you have a car, it's sitting there parked. You're not driving most of the time. So when you're not driving it, other people are using it for rental, and that money goes first back to Toyota to pay for the car, and then the time that's left over you get, and or the cash that's left over you get. So they're coming with new business models to solve the problem that they're stuck making something that nobody wants to buy. And this is changing everything. So if there's so much change, if we're living in an era of endless innovation, wouldn't you want to grab a piece of that? What's stopping you? I grew up a few blocks from you. I grew up in South Philly. Dad was a public school teacher, lived in a row home. I didn't know what a millionaire was. I still remember as a little boy, there's certain things people say to you and it doesn't sink in. My dad we were walking by a parking lot, and my dad goes, God, the guy who owns this must make a fortune. And as a little kid, I'm going like, it's an empty lot. How does anybody make money? I don't understand money, right? I don't understand, like, hey, people pay to park and all that. But as I talk about in the book, as a small child, I visited Hearst Castle in California, where a guy lived at the top with a giant mansion. William Randolph Hearst that owned all the newspapers. Still didn't understand what money was. But when they explained to me that he had polar bears as pets and guys trucked up and by horse carriage ice for the polar bears every day, I go, that's rich. I want to be that. And so I started looking. Are you hanging out with people that are like you or people that you can learn from? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're a moron. Because you're not. Okay? I'm consistently the dumbest person out there. Why do I continue to teach university students? Because they're living in a new world without the blinders that I have by habit. They can see new opportunities because they don't have old habits of old ways. The most annoying thing you can do to millennials is call and leave them a voicemail. They don't understand that. That's 1876 Alexander Graham Bell technology. Then you got to call up the voicemail and do that and then leave a voicemail for them? No. You text, and it's asynchronous communication, and it works. So if they're looking at the world differently, what needs can now be fulfilled that nobody focused on doing? And I'll give you a real simple one from one of my readers that I absolutely love. You're about to take your medicine, the phone rings, you have a conversation, you're standing there with the pill bottle and say, did I take my pill or didn't? That's the type of problem that you discover in that 30 days of writing down problems. So he took a Happy Meal watch, a little nickel watch, put it on the lid of it, so every time you close the pill bottle, it sets a countdown clock. So now you look at your pill bottle and it says you opened it 4 minutes ago. Yes, you took your pill. Or, oh, haven't opened it for 8 hours? No, I didn't. Well, that sounds like a simple invention, but with Obamacare and nationalized medicine, if we could get people to finish their prescriptions properly, we'd save tens of billions of dollars a year. If he can get a bill through Congress to mandate this new cap that he's come out with, he becomes a billionaire. It's that simple. Now he's made a more advanced version with a little Bluetooth in it so that you can see on your iPhone whether Grandma took her medicine, and you can call her and say, Grandma, you forgot to take your pill today. And if she figures out how you knew that, then she'll stop taking, so you call more often. But it solves problems. So, Arthur, do you have any problems in your life?
We all do.
Well, solve them and solve them for others. So the secret of success is solving for others. The other secret is having a positive attitude. If you're in a funk, if you're completely depressed, if you're woe is me, life sucks, look how bad it is, look how unfair it is, I'm working for the man, da-da-da-da-da, you won't see opportunity if it's right in front of your nose. So wake up every day. It's a miracle that you're here. It's an amazing time to be alive. And there's two truths about today.